So welcome to yet another session at ABLE 2023. Today, I'd like to welcome Morgan Gresham and Sarah Sir Helen, and also in spirit, Megan Mize, who are members of the ABLE Digital Ethics Task Force and have been for the last 4 years. And they will be sharing with us some insights from a year-long North American survey. So over to you, Sarah and Morgan.
Thank you all so much for coming to our session this afternoon, evening, morning, whichever time of day it is for you. We're happy to share this information with you. Just briefly, we are going to talk a little bit about the task force, the principles. We're going to focus on the visibility of labor principle today, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the findings from our Mapping ePortfolio project. We do have a file that has all of our slides in it, and that is available there for you. And it does have our recordings that include Megan, who is going to be our next speaker. So if we can go ahead and advance to the next slide, we will let that happen.
And I just briefly want to say, Megan has been kind enough to record these because she couldn't be here. So I'm going to try to do my best to honor that by playing them quickly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Megan Mize. I'm the Director for ePortfolios and Digital Initiatives at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, where I lead pedagogical initiatives centered on digital literacies and high impact practices. I'm sorry I cannot join you today. ABLE's Digital Ethics and ePortfolios Task Force originated from conversations acknowledging the need for resources on digital ethics in ePortfolio contexts. As the use of ePortfolios grew alongside rapidly evolving technologies, laws, and digital practices, the international ePortfolio community saw a chance to advocate for ethical ePortfolio implementation. As a result, the task force has been active since 2019. Over time, the task force has formulated and refined a collection of 10 digital ethics principles tailored specifically for ePortfolio practice. Each principle consists of 4 components: a concise statement summarizing its content, practical strategies for implementation, real-life scenarios showcasing the principle and strategies in action, and additional resources for further support. Please explore the principles by visiting the link provided on the slide and in the chat. The task force considers the principles as an evolving document open to continuous revision. We highly value feedback from the community and encourage you to share your thoughts and suggestions. Today, we are sharing work that centers on the visibility of labor principle. The rationale for this principle is as follows. Learning is invisible labor. Constant shifts in technologies, strategies, rhetorical knowledge, technical skills, genres, and professional expectations require ongoing efforts by all stakeholders. The ability to develop, implement, create, and support and assess ePortfolios requires faculty and staff to have multidisciplinary expertise that should be recognized and rewarded by the institutions in which ePortfolio work takes place. In addition, the intellectual and affective labor and personal risk required of students to learn and employ new platforms, genres, and compositional practices when designing and creating ePortfolios should be recognized and rewarded. The Digital Ethics and ePortfolios Task Force seeks to put the principles into practice, starting with the visibility of labor principle. Inspired by the International WAC-WID Mapping Project and the National Census of Writing, the task force aims to capture and value the often overlooked or fleeting aspects of ePortfolio labor. Our goal is to comprehensively map and understand the field of ePortfolio work in higher education across the US and Canada, with plans to conduct similar projects internationally.
We began our research project because we wanted to move beyond the anecdotal to have more data-informed understanding of who is doing ePortfolio work, how this work is supported at different types of institutions, how the work is acknowledged, and what elements contribute to sustainability and success of ePortfolio initiatives. We are particularly interested in the professionalization of ePortfolio professionals.
So at this point, we're wrapping up the end of the first year. In fact, at the end of this presentation, we're going to ask anybody who hasn't yet participated to please participate. And then it's going to take us a while to really dig into all of the findings, but we wanted to take this opportunity at the ABLE annual meeting to share what we know so far. We just haven't had a chance to like thoroughly dig through the data yet. And this is kind of outlining where we're going to go for the rest of the presentation in terms of showing you some charts and graphs that dig in a little bit to these big picture findings. Most of our respondents identified as faculty, although not far removed from that, were people who identified as primarily staff and administration. Only 11 of our respondents were central e-portfolio coordinators. The biggest reason people noted using e-portfolios was for integrative learning and reflection, and those uses were followed by assessment and career prep. According to the survey, e-portfolios are most commonly used in individual courses versus large-scale implementation. The major e-portfolio partners for a lot of people included centers for teaching and learning, tech support, and writing centers. The labor that people who said they considered themselves to be e-portfolio professionals on their campus, and we'll talk a little bit about how the survey narrowed those down. So they mostly characterize their labor primarily in terms of tech support, faculty development, instructional design, and student support. The majority of the people doing this work feel that it is not acknowledged. And a lot of people in their comments found ways to point out how implementation success requires sort of equal amounts of faculty buy-in and admin support. And now Megan's going to tell us a little bit more about our responses.
So far, 62 people have participated in the Mapping ePortfolio Labor Survey, representing a range of higher education institutions. Majority, 48.4% of respondents, come from institutions known for their extensive research activity.
Response to our question about the length of experience working with portfolios shows the growth and impact of ePortfolios over time, with 22 respondents report being relatively new, 0 to 3 years, but 18 respondents have been using ePortfolios for 8 or more years. It's interesting when juxtaposed with the length of time institutions have been using ePortfolios, we're starting to see patterns around new professionalization, new titles or roles, and the familiar pattern of one person being the portfolio person or ePortfolio person at a department or at an institution. And we're really interested in digging into that data a little bit more. A majority of respondents' primary role working with ePortfolios is that of instructor, followed by instructional support, program directors, assessment support, and generalized advocate. We see that there are not clear titles that move across institutions. For example, the way that the term, for example, writing program administrator, a WPA, has coalesced, and we see that over and over again in scholarship, or as people refer to themselves. That hasn't happened yet with our respondents who have ePortfolio responsibilities. We see the kinds of roles that they're playing, but we don't see that they have a title that follows through across different institutions.
So this is kind of the big picture in terms of what we know at this point about places ePortfolios are used. And for this question, people could they could provide multiple answers, right? So they could say they're used in multiples of these. But obviously individual classes is significantly higher than everything else. And then we sort of have this middle ground, including general education programs, individual students using them, and then being used at like the department level or discipline certificate, degree pathway programs. If you look a little bit further down, you'll see that both institution-wide implementations and career services implementations are quite small. Only 10 respondents indicated that they're used for those purposes. And I think that that points to some additional interesting questions we want to ask, right, about what institution-wide implementations look like. I'm sure everybody here has some sense of how difficult they might be given different circumstances, but we also all know examples of very large institutions, I think, where they've worked. And so I think that leads to some interesting questions. And then career services, there's a real interesting tension there that we've seen. Another finding that we're going to look at in a little while that I highlighted in our key findings list earlier has to do with one of the larger reasons that people are using, at least in terms of the respondents to our survey, are using ePortfolios is for career development, right? A career preparation. And so I think there's a really interesting tension there between that use and the fact that obviously a lot of people, and we'll see this too when we talk about collaborators, aren't necessarily doing that in conversation with or in concert with their career services places on campus. People who said other for this one indicated that ePortfolios are also used in their honors college. Some said practicum and clinical courses. A couple of people pointed out first-year writing and first-year experience classes as a particular place where ePortfolios are happening. And then one other respondent listed digital showcases, internships, and capstones. So what we'd like to do right now is just ask you very briefly to respond in the chat and let us know where ePortfolios are used at your institution. And we'll kind of keep moving through, I think, the data here, but we're curious and kind of collecting this information and talking about it ideally as we get towards the end of the talk with time for conversation.
So despite the ePortfolios existing in contested spaces, our respondents overwhelmingly agree that portfolios are used widely for reflection. 58% of our respondents responded that they use portfolios for reflection, integrative learning, assessment, employability, multimodal or multimedia composing. I think it's interesting that we have this overarching understanding how ePortfolios are used across institutions, but we don't yet have that roles and responsibilities that we are looking for in terms of if you are professionalized into working, supporting ePortfolios, how we talk about that work. So for the next slide, we want to have that same conversation about how ePortfolios are used at your institution. Would you say that they are applying new technologies, assessment, capturing faculty administrative work, integrative learning, web design conventions? If you could post that information in the chat as well.
So as we really dig into these labor questions, some of the things we were really interested in finding out were what are people's primary ePortfolio tasks and responsibilities? And the ABLE task force worked together to sort of brainstorm some options based on our own experiences. And we're a pretty diverse group in terms of the roles that we play in higher education. And so this was the list that we started out working with. And we discovered, as I said at the beginning, that these first four are the things that most people responded to, saying that this is a primary task of mine. And I want to narrow in for a minute because you might notice that the numbers are significantly different here, that only 14 people said technology support, 13 said faculty development. So our survey is a branching survey. And at one point it asks participants if there is a primary ePortfolio person on their campus. And if they say yes, it says, are you that person? And if you say yes again, it takes you to another set of questions. And this was one of those questions where we wanted to get into the details of the people. If your primary role on campus is serving ePortfolios in some way, we wanted to know what your tasks and responsibilities are. And so that's who these answers are representing. And if you're in one of those roles, you might find that these answers really align with your experience, or maybe they don't. We ourselves have had some really funny conversations about like, duh, of course, nobody has time to provide research support and marketing. They're too busy providing tech support and faculty development. So I think we have our own read on what some of these mean. But we're going to be doing some interviews to get more into the details, more about that in a minute. So a little bit more about time spent on primary tasks. You can see a little bit of a breakdown here. And I think the most salient point that I want to highlight in this just insights into is that most people do some of this, right? It's like there is nobody in this list said, oh, I only do this one thing, right? And I do this a lot and none for any of these other things. Most people said they did some of everything. And that is a particularly valuable insight for us because it suggests the kind of multidisciplinary expertise that is required of this kind of labor, that you have to be able to fill all of these different roles. And we don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's the lived reality of the people doing this work right now. And then maybe just for the sake of time, if anybody would like to answer this in the chat, please do, but I'm going to keep moving us forward and potentially we could like have some time to chat about people's answers to these questions at the end.
So our respondents say that they work mostly with teaching and learning centers, technology centers, and writing centers. One respondent notes that with many positions in higher education, additional duties have been added to my plate and have edged out available time and effort to spend on e-portfolios. Competing goals and limited time available to collaborate across departments can hinder efforts that would allow for intentional, structured e-portfolio use at the institution. And I think that that's really one of the key findings that we want to acknowledge, that there is so much to do and so little time to do that. Sarah, if you can go on to the next slide. Again, we want to hear from you in the chat about what who you are connecting with and how you are connecting. If we can go on to the next slide. Just a quick acknowledgement or lack thereof of the work that's being done. Our respondents really still feel that their work is not being acknowledged or valued at their institutions. A majority of respondents, 37, still feel that ePortfolio endeavors are not acknowledged at all, or others see them just minimally so, with small awards, course releases, limited stipends, and in some cases credit toward tenure and promotion. It is not the hope that we had that people would find that they have lots of course releases or that they have lots of stipends. That's just not the space that we're in. There are some folks who are starting to find that coordinators have some relief time, but everybody is being asked to do more with less.
Yeah, and that sort of leads us to where our findings have taken us so far in this process, and that is that a lot of ePortfolio practice is care work. And I'm going to just share a few of our narrative responses from respondents, and this largely was when they were just asked to share any other thoughts with us about their role or about their ePortfolio experiences and labor. And one respondent said, quote, while some faculty and some admin appreciate the benefits of ePortfolio, once the initial grant funding was used up, those of us still advocating and producing ePortfolio work noticed that it became seen as service at best, and therefore not fiscally supporting faculty adoption, less men involved, and quote, given to women admin and faculty to maintain in line with other duties. And so just the very gendered nature of how this is happening on somebody's campus fits within the history of care work roles. Somebody else wrote, I have found that my position has evolved to encompass many roles, which points back to that multidisciplinary expertise that is required of people doing this work. And then this person said, few of these are compensated, and yet if I do not serve in these roles, I fear all of our progress will be lost. And the final one, I won't read the whole thing, but the person wrote, I love this work and I love spearheading it, but even I already have a foot out the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to get back to earning my data analytics certificate so I can find a better paying gig. And those are really representative of a lot of the narrative responses that we got from people in terms of the energy and the care and, I mean, for lack of a better word, the passion they have for this work that at the same time is often not appropriately recognized by the institution. So we are really are hoping to dig more into this. Like I said, the next step of this particular survey is one of the final questions asks people if they would be willing to participate in interviews. And so again, we ask you, if you're here and you have not taken the survey yet, please do. It will take about 20 minutes of of your time, which we recognize as valuable, but we are planning to create a Google site where we share all of the raw data of our findings once we put it into a form that is shareable with others. We want this to be useful information for the ePortfolio community and for practitioners. So we really invite you to participate and say like, hey, I'd like to be interviewed. And then ideally in like a year, we'll have more information from those interviews. And then the final step of this is that our survey is going down under. So we're moving to the next part of the survey research, and that's going to take place in Australia and New Zealand. And a few other people are sort of leading that part of the project. But if this is you or anybody you know, please share the survey with them for that part of the world. And lastly, we heart discussion. Sorry, we went a few minutes over time, but I hope we still have a few minutes to chat if everybody would like to.